What's going on, guys? So you might have noticed that I've not been uploading much as recently, and that's simply because I've not had a lot of motivation to do YouTube videos, because every time I sit down to make one, I just stumble and slur my words, and it's not really a lot of fun making YouTube videos anymore, because I just feel like I put too much pressure on myself. So that's why there's been no new release reviews or anything like that. But I'm trying a different format, and it's different for me. It's not a new format. It's been done quite a few times before, and it's simply, as the title of the video would suggest, what I watched this month. And I'm gonna try this out for a little bit. Just at the end of every month, just list all the films and sometimes TV shows. Whenever I do watch TV shows, everything that I watched in the month, and just give my quick thoughts on them. And I just think that this format might be better for me in terms of putting my thoughts on YouTube in video form. So yeah, these are all the films and one TV show that I watched in February 2020, so sit back and hopefully enjoy. So starting off on the 2nd of February, I watched Uncut Gems, the new Adam Sandler film directed by the Safdie brothers. It was put on Netflix in the UK, and I was a little bit trepidatious going into this film because, unlike everybody else, I wasn't a massive fan of Good Time, the last film they did with Robert Pattinson. It was good, but I mean, I didn't get the constant 5 out of 5 grades that I kept seeing for it. It was good, but whatever. And I was worried that Uncut Gems was going to follow the same fate, but thankfully that was not the case. I really liked Uncut Gems. It was a really nerve-wracking film. It did a good job at putting you on edge when Adam Sandler is doing all of his shady stuff, trying to pay back the people who he's in debt to, and Adam Sandler is just very good in here. This is the first dramatic Adam Sandler performance I've seen, and I want to see more dramatic Adam Sandler performances because he's really damn good. Even though his character in the film is a scumbag, I found myself kind of weirdly rooting for his character towards the end. So I don't know how the film pulled that off, but it pulled it off. So gets a lot of points for that. Again, I'm not like overwhelmed by this film. I just like Good Time. I've seen a lot of 5 out of 5s for this. It's not a 5 out of 5 for me. In fact, it's a 4 out of 5 for me for Uncut Gems, but it's still really good. I really liked it. Next up, on the 3rd of February, I watched The Lighthouse, the new film directed by Robert Eggers, starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. And I was a fan of Robert Eggers' previous film, The Witch. It was one of the good horror films of nowadays, so I was looking forward to what he was going to do next. And also because of the visual look and style of this film, with the aspect ratio and the black and white. And that was one of the great things about this film. And the overall film itself is a really good descent into madness. I'm always down for a really good descent into madness kind of film, and this one was a strangely interesting one because you're just constantly thinking, what's going on this island? What's Willem Dafoe hiding? What's in the lighthouse? And just seeing Robert Pattinson continuously losing his mind was quite entertaining to watch. That accompanied with, again, the unique visual look of the film and just the overall atmosphere. It was very eerie, very creepy. Just the uncertainty of what was going on was really engaging to me. Again, I'm not overwhelmed by this film, because that's the thing with some of these recent 2019 films, because there's another one that I'm going to talk about later where they've been so incredibly hyped up where I don't overwhelmingly like it and love it as much as other people do, but I still really like it. So maybe upon rewatches I might start getting more towards the love territory with some of these films. But as for now, The Lighthouse, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. On the 4th of February, I watched the James Bond film Live and Let Die. Now, I'm currently in the process of watching all the Bond films leading up to No Time to Die on April 2nd. I just got the James Bond Blu-ray box set for Christmas, and I'm watching all 24 films. And Live and Let Die was the first one that I watched in February. Now, Live and Let Die is my childhood favourite Bond film. I watched this one all the time on VHS for, I don't really know why, it was the one that I gravitated towards to the most when I was younger. And I still quite like this film, nostalgia aside. I do get a nostalgic kick from it, but I actually think it's a pretty enjoyable Bond film. The voodoo element was new for a Bond film, and you think, wait, James Bond and voodoo, that sounds so contradictory and it sounds very un-Bondish, but it surprisingly works. I enjoyed the voodoo element and the setting of San Monique, the fictional island of San Monique. The villains were mostly entertaining. Baron Samedi and Tiki Johnson were the entertaining villains. Dr. Kananga, not so much. I like the theme song by Paul McCartney. It's one of my favourite Bond theme songs. The speedboat chase was really good. One of the best boat chases I've ever seen in a film. And also the crocodile farm scene was quite suspenseful and really well done because it was an actual guy running across actual crocodiles. So that was some good stuff. So yeah, I enjoy Live and Let Die. It's not the best Bond film. It's still my childhood favourite Bond film, and I still get a nostalgic kick out of it. But I still think it's a pretty good film. A good start for Roger Moore as well. He was quite smooth and charming in here, separating himself from Sean Connery and George Lazenby. So overall, I'm going to give Live and Let Die a 3.5 out of 5. On the 5th of February, I watched When Harry Met Sally for the very first time. It's a classic rom-com film. People have talked about this film ever since it's come out as one of the great rom-coms. And upon finally watching it, I can see why. It was a very sweet film, and it's a very believable film as well, because you're watching it and you genuinely buy the fact that Harry and Sally are friends, but you can kind of detect the unspoken romance, which makes it more compelling when towards the end some feelings start coming to the surface. Their chemistry was really great, and you just gravitate towards them immediately. Billy Crystal, even though he's kind of a cynical guy, he's kind of entertaining in a cynical kind of way. So yeah, I really enjoyed When Harry Met Sally, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. On the 7th of February, I went to the cinema and I watched Birds of Prey and the stupidly long subtitle excuse to get Harley Quinn's name into the title of the film so people can hopefully come out and watch it, but then Warner Brothers changed the title to Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, the title that it should have been given in the first place when it started underperforming at the box office. Anyway, wasn't a big fan of Birds of Prey, to be honest. I tried doing a video for it, but I just couldn't get through it because, again, I was slurring my words, I was just constantly messing it up, but also because my thoughts on the film and what I was saying about it just weren't as in-depth as a video about it really deserved. But yeah, it's just the film for me was a mixed bag of entertainment and boredom. There were some fun scenes, pretty much every fight scene I enjoyed. The choreography was good, it was colourful, and it was fun just watching Harley Quinn going around and just beating the hell out of people in Harley Quinn insanity fashion. And I liked Huntress, but she was barely in the film. And yeah, it's just the story wasn't all that great. The characterization wasn't very strong outside of Harley Quinn, which is the thing. It's like, it's called Birds of Prey, but it's really a Harley Quinn film. The Birds of Prey don't become the Birds of Prey until the very end, so whatever. But yeah, it's just the film itself, it wasn't the laugh or fun riot that I'd heard it was. So I'm going to give Birds of Prey a 2.5 out of 5. On February 8th, I watched the next Bond film in the marathon, The Man with the Golden Gun, Roger Moore's second film, with the late great Christopher Lee as Scaramanga, who was probably the best part of the film. He was an entertaining and interesting villain. And Man with the Golden Gun was decent. There was some good action scenes in it, some good chases. The whole chase with Bond in the sports car chasing Scaramanga, you have that the barrel roll jump with that stupid whistle sound effect. There were some good scenes, but kind of like Birds of Prey, it was like a mixture of entertainment and boredom, but slightly more entertainment than boredom. There were some good set pieces, some good locations. I liked every scene that was in Scaramanga's kind of funhouse was weirdly entertaining. Overall, a kind of middle-of-the-road Bond film with a great theme song, a great villain, but an overall package that just didn't really get my blood pumping, so I'll give The Man with the Golden Gun a 3 out of 5. On the 11th of February, I watched Roman J. Israel Esquire. This was a 2017 film that I didn't see at the cinema. This is the one that Denzel was nominated for the Oscar for, and I was very meh on this one as well. Denzel was good in the film. Don't know if he was Oscar-worthy in it, but he was good in it. And I appreciated what the film was trying to do, you know, because he's this very dedicated lawyer who's all about the law, and he has this kind of moral dilemma that he kind of sacrifices the stuff he believes in. And it tries to be like a moral dilemma kind of film, and it's trying to be interesting and compelling. But for me, it just didn't really succeed at that. I just wasn't on board with it. I wasn't overly won over by the film's execution of the story, the characterization. Well acted by Denzel again, and there were a couple of interesting bits to it, but overall, I was just not very satisfied with this one, so I'll give Roman J. Israel Esquire a 2 out of 5. On the 12th of February, I rewatched Joker, my number one film of 2019, because I bought it on Blu-ray, and I've already talked about this film at length and at nauseum, so if you want my full thoughts on Joker, watch my dedicated video, my top 10 list of 2019, but just very briefly, again, it's my favourite film of 2019. I think it's a captivating, enthralling character study, a really compelling tragedy. Again, it's not trying to make you cheer for Arthur Fleck and the Joker. He's not making him out to be a good guy. It's a tragedy. It's a cautionary tale, and I think it's one of the best ones that I've seen. So Joker for me is still a 5 out of 5. I still love it. Still my favourite film of 2019. On the 13th of February was the next Bond film in the marathon, The Spy Who Loved Me. And so far, this is, as of making this video, the 1st of March, this is currently my second favourite Bond film out of the 13 that I've watched as of making this video. Simply because of the execution and how enjoyable and fun it was. It was kind of a hint at some of the absurdity to come in Roger Moore's later films, you know, underwater cities and stuff like that, but the vibe that this film had was just really fun, globe-trotting, James Bond adventure coolness with one of the best Bond cars, the submarine Lotus, one of the best Bond girls in Amsova, absolutely the best Bond henchman in Jaws. So the fight scenes are great, chase scenes are great, overall just a really fun, really enjoyable Bond film. So I'm going to give The Spy Who Loved Me a 4 out of 5. On February the 15th was another rewatch, and this was for The Breakfast Club, mainly because it was the 35th anniversary of the film, so I thought it would be rude not to rewatch it. And I've always enjoyed this film, but this particular viewing of The Breakfast Club just struck a chord with me, and I now adore this film. I'm a massive John Hughes guy, so his films just do something, well, most of his films, as I'll get to later, do something for me like no other coming of age type films do. In this film, the characterization, the representation of teenagers as regular human beings, and just the way that John Hughes decided to characterize them was so great and different for the time. I love all the characters and their problems and seeing them communicate to each other. It's the definitive coming of age high school film. And The Breakfast Club, it just struck me on this particular viewing, like I said, and it went from a 4 out of 5 to now, for me, The Breakfast Club is a 5 out of 5. On February the 16th, I went to the cinema and actually gave Sonic the Hedgehog a shot because everyone was saying how surprisingly decent it was. And I thought the film was okay, and I was enjoying parts of it. The last third, there was a lot of dialogue that I've heard a billion times before. Like, the entire thing was very generic for a film like this, but it's just like some of the execution was enjoyable at parts. Jim Carrey was absolutely the best part of the film. Him still having that same energy that he's had when he was in his early 20s. He can still do it, man. I mean, I really want to see Jim Carrey in more comedies, because he can still do it. He can still be the crazy Jim Carrey that he's known for. And yeah, just this film, I don't really know what else to say about it. It was exactly what I thought it would be, just not as bad as I was expecting, because to me it looked terrible from the trailer. But it was alright. I didn't hate myself watching it, but I wasn't like going, yay, Sonic, yay. So yeah, 2.5 out of 5 for Sonic. Also on the 16th of February was the next Bond film along, Moonraker. Now this is that Bond film, the one where James Bond goes to space, and ironically, the part where James Bond goes to space was actually my favourite part of the film, because I was expecting it to be like, you know, it's going to be entertaining until the last act where, wow, Bond goes to space, Jesus, but it was actually the opposite. I was actually not all that entertained until the finale when he's in space. I found it honestly a bit dull for the most part. The opening sequence when James is pushed out of the plane without a parachute was actually quite thrilling, because it was real people going out of a plane. They had hidden parachutes, but they made it look like as if they didn't, and it was quite intense. But apart from that, and a couple of other good chases in there, wasn't very impressed by Moonraker as a whole, so I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5. Now, after watching The Breakfast Club, it kind of made me go on a random John Hughes binge, and I watched 2 films of his on the 17th, the first being Pretty in Pink. Now, he only produced and wrote this film, he didn't direct it, but people still classify it as a John Hughes film, so I watched it nonetheless, and I enjoyed it. Wasn't my favourite coming-of-age film, teen film that I've ever seen, but it was well done. I liked Molly Ringwald in the film and the stuff that her character goes through, and her trying to get in this relationship with the main guy, Blaine. Was that his name, Blaine? Yeah. And John Cryer as Ducky. What is it with John Cryer, Blaine? Unlikable characters, just straight up douchebag characters, but what can I say? He's quite good at it. And yeah, it's very standard teen high school coming of age fare, but well done, and that's all I can really ask for at the end of the day. So I'll give Pretty in Pink a 3.5 out of 5. Also on the 17th of February, I watched Weird Science, actually directed by John Hughes, And this is definitely the most outlandish film that John Hughes made, because it's the only film of his that I've seen that's not based in reality. It's got sci-fi elements in it, but I like how he used the sci-fi coat of paint to still tell the same kind of messages for teenagers, but it having that sci-fi coat of paint, it was a different experience than a typical John Hughes film, and I enjoyed it. It's his most outlandish film, but it doesn't take away from what he achieves from a character level. But the sci-fi elements were still quite enjoyable for the most part, apart from when Bill Paxton is turned into that weird blob thing at the end. That was a bit bizarre, but the rest of it was fun. It was like Frankenstein meets a sexualized version of Mary Poppins, and I personally have a really good time with weird science, so I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5 as well. On February 18th was the next Bond film along, For Your Eyes Only. Now this Bond film took it back to basics. It got rid of the outlandish plots, these stupid megalomaniac villains and over-the-top BS that riddled Moonraker and some of the other ones, and it went back to a more grounded, somber, sober kind of Bond film, more of a thriller kind of Bond film. And it might not have the bombastic thrills of, say, The Spy Who Loved Me, but I found it to be an engaging film, and I like Bond films like this that takes the plot seriously and the villains aren't, mustache twirling or just, guys in a mountain fortress trying to rule the world. Bond's going after a drug guy who's smuggling drugs through Greece and stuff, and I found it, again, engaging on that front. The chase scenes were well done, and just an overall a satisfying Bond outing, and one of the more satisfying ones that I've seen so far. The only thing I didn't really care for was the romance. Like, Melina Havelock and Bond have no romantic chemistry throughout the entire film, and then the very end they're together, because you can't have a Bond film end without Bond being with the girl. But apart from that, really liked For Your Eyes Only, so I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Also on the 18th of February, I got to check out a 2019 film that had a ton of hype. In fact, it won Best Picture. It was Parasite. Been very keen to check this out for a while, and as I alluded to earlier when talking about Uncut Gems and The Lighthouse, I really liked Parasite, but I've yet to overwhelmingly love Parasite. I really enjoyed I didn't know what the premise of this film was. I deliberately kept away from plot details. I just heard some things about rich and poor. That's all I knew about it, but the plot was really enjoyable, watching the family con their way into working in this house, and some of the stuff that happens. I'm not going to spoil it in case you still haven't seen it, but the middle of the film goes in a direction that I was not expecting. Again, it's just I haven't got to that level where I adore this film like everybody else adores this film, but I still really like it. I'm not disappointed or sad that it won Best Picture. I personally would not have put it in my top 10 of 2019 had I seen it before I did my top 10 of 2019, but that's not to take anything away from what this film is and the achievement that it got for being the first foreign language film to win Best Picture. I'm not disappointed in that whatsoever, so I'm going to give Parasite overall a 4 out of 5. On February 19th, I continued the John Hughes binge with another film of his that he produced and wrote, Some Kind of Wonderful, a film that came out in 1987. It stars Leah Thompson, Eric Stoltz, the original Marty McFly, and Mary Stuart Masterson, and just like it is very similar to Pretty in Pink, except it's kind of a role reversal where you have, in Pretty in Pink you had the girl trying to go after a guy and the guy best friend is jealous of it, but in this one it's a guy going after a girl but the girl best friend to the guy jealous of it. So yeah, again, standard coming of age teen romance stuff, but well done once again. And it's just the magic word is execution. You can have the most standard cliched formula of all time, but if you do it right, it can work wonders. And this film, I wouldn't say it worked wonders, no pun intended, but it was a solid coming of age high school teen romance, and I actually quite liked Mary Stuart Masterson's character, and I really felt for her when she sees her best friend going after somebody else. So it gave me the feels a couple of times. It was successful, so I'll give Some Kind of Wonderful a 3.5 out of 5. Also on the 19th of February is another John Hughes film. This one was another one that he actually directed, and that's She's Having a Baby, the film with Kevin Bacon. And it saddens me to say that this is the first John Hughes directed film that I've ever watched that didn't really do it for me. I honestly found this film somewhat depressing, because it's about these two living a married life and it seeming like it's not all that special. And I just didn't really connect to the film. Maybe you have to be married to really relate to the film, which I, of course, am not. But yeah, it's just execution wise, it didn't really do it for me. I wasn't entertained by it. I didn't attach to the characters. Yeah, that's all I can really say. That's why I'm doing what I watched thing now, because a lot of my thoughts on films are not very in depth. So She's Having a Baby, meh, my first disappointing John Hughes film, so 2.5 out of 5 for that. On February 20th, I rewatched Prisoners, the Denis Villeneuve film starring Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal, the missing kids film where Hugh Jackman, you know Prisoners, I'm pretty sure you've all seen it by now. I've always loved Prisoners. I've always found it to be very captivating, extremely engaging, very emotional, and it's still all those things, except on this occasion and on this watch, it went from 4.5 out of 5 to a 5 out of 5. On February the 21st was the next Bond film along, Octopussy, and this is where you can really start to notice Roger Moore's age, because he's not as fluid in his movements, but that really wasn't the thing that really bothered me about Octopussy. It's just I found the story to be very dull. But a lot of the chase scenes, like the train sequence, was actually quite good. The plane sequence at the end was also quite good because it was real and practical for the most part. Those scenes were good. In fact, the entire sequence building up to the nuclear bomb in the circus scene, that entire section of the film was actually quite good. I was actually kind of on the edge of my seat. But everything else surrounding it, again, the story, the characters, the villains, I found it really blah and kind of dull. So for me, Octopussy is a 2.5 out of 5. On February the 23rd was the next John Hughes watch, Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Now, I had seen this film once, many years ago. I forgot a lot about it, so I just rewatched it because John Hughes. And this film is wonderful. I really like this film a lot after watching it. It's one of the best road trip films ever made. And the chemistry between Steve Martin and John Candy is impeccable. They contrast each other perfectly for this kind of film. And it's one of those films where you can't picture it without the two people or the main people in it. Like, I cannot picture anyone else in this film other than Steve Martin and John Candy. And the ending is really what got to me, because I was enjoying it as a road trip of frustrations leading up to it. But the very end, when Steve Martin goes back to the train station and John Candy's still there, you find out that he has no home and his wife has been dead for 8 years. That hit me where I live. And then it cuts to that shot of them walking down the street holding a suitcase. I got chills, but it was like feel-good chills. You know what I mean? When something just warms your heart, and I just love passionate displays of friendship like that. And to see them get to that level by the end of the film, it was wonderful. I really like Planes, Trains and Automobiles a lot, so for me now it's a 4.5 out of 5 film. On February the 24th, I did a random rewatch of 50/50, the film with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Seth Rogen, Bryce Dallas Howard, Anna Kendrick, the film in which Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets cancer, and it's kind of a comedy drama. And it's one of those films that, funnily enough, is kind of 50/50 for some people because it's such a serious subject matter, but they approach it in a very comedic way. But I, for one, feel like this is one of the best dramedies that I've ever seen because of the way it balances the comedy and the drama and also the emotion. This is one of those rare films, and you know the scene I'm talking about in the hospital room at the end where I'm like tearing up, and then in the next second I just burst out laughing because of just how they balance it. It's so well done. It's a very emotional film. One of the best films of 2011, 4.5 out of 5. On February the 25th, I watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind for the very first time. This is a film that's been on my radar for a while because I've heard a lot of people call this one of the best films of the 21st century, apparently, which is very big praise. And I'm not going to quite go that far, but I did really like this film a lot. And somebody asked me, isn't that film depressing? I'm like, I guess if you look at it a certain way, it can be depressing, but I found it more kind of hopeful, but not necessarily in terms of the tone of it does seem kind of miserable at times, but it was the good kind, and I think it worked for the film. And I love the premise of this film because Jim Carrey's trying to erase his memories of Kate Winslet, and he's kind of inside his own mind trying to stop the process. I summed it up in my letterboxd as Inception meets 500 Days of Summer, because you have that kind of metaphysical premise taking place inside someone's mind, but mix that in with the realistic relationship portrayals that you kind of saw in 500 Days of Summer, That's how I came into it anyway. I found it emotionally engaging and interesting. Jim Carrey was great, Kate Winslet was great. Overall, the film was great. So for me, it's a 4.5 out of 5 for Eternal Sunshine. On February the 26th, I watched I Am Not Okay With This, the new Netflix series starring Sophia Lillis, who played Beverly in It Chapter 1. This was a random one because I saw a bit of a trailer for it a couple of weeks ago and saw that it looked kind of interesting. It's a high school kind of tale but with a supernatural twist, and I really enjoyed it. It had a lot of... It was very cliched in terms of the story and some of the things that happen, but I liked the character that Sophia Lillis plays, Sid. I liked her problems. She was compelling. You cared about her. And it effectively portrays awkwardness of adolescence very well. But it's also the supernatural kind of superpowered twist that gives it that extra edge above just being a typical high school series. I really enjoyed it. I liked Stanley. He was a cool side character. And the final episode was pretty gnarly, I'm not gonna lie. Me and my friend were like, that was awesome. So yeah, it's a good series on Netflix. 7 episodes, 20 minutes long. It kind of plays like a 2-hour, 20-minute film, just split into 7 mini episodes. So I really enjoyed it, and I think there's gonna be a season 2. I mean, the way it ends, it sets up for a season 2. I can't wait to watch it if that happens. So yeah, I'm gonna give I Am Not Okay With This a 4 out of 5. On February the 27th, I did a random watch of Annabelle Creation. Me and my friend just got on Netflix and we just decided to watch this out of nowhere. And this film got good reviews, and I don't really understand why, because to me it was just same old horror rubbish. Generic, jump scare riddled, obviously plotted, predictably written, you know what the next line of dialogue's going to be. And a lot of it was just like a sequence of scare sequences, and there were a couple of genuinely creepy imagery. There's one imagery especially where I think it's the scene where the girl's underneath the stairs and she sees the doll and there's those eyes behind the doll. That kind of gave me shivers, but outside of that, same old horror BS. I wasn't a fan of it. 2 out of 5. Staying in the horror genre, on the 28th of February, I went to the cinema to watch The Invisible Man. Now, I was looking forward to this film because of that one scene in the trailer where she's sat on the floor and she says, "Someone's sitting in that chair." It kind of gave me the shivers, and I was like, okay, if that's what the film's going to be like, I'm in. And that's what the film was like, at least for the first half. And I really enjoyed The Invisible Man because it just played to the strengths of the potential of its premise. Again, in the first half, it's more of the creepy, anxiety-inducing, nerve-wracking, oh my god, there's an invisible person in here, where is he, what's he doing, blah blah blah. The second half turns into more of a entertaining thriller, not going to spoil it, but I found it to be very effective throughout, simply because, for once, a film capitalised on the potential of its premise, and also Elizabeth Moss really brought it to life. She was really good in the film, and one scene especially made my jaw drop, and I'm just going to say the restaurant scene. You know what I'm talking about. Really like The Invisible Man, a good horror film of the last couple of years, and so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. And last but not least, also on the 28th of February, another random Netflix watch was Girl on the Third Floor. This is the independent horror film starring former wrestler CM Punk, where he's renovating the house and weird things start happening. Now look, I know it's an independent film. They didn't have a lot of budget, so they didn't have much to work with. But I just wasn't a fan of the film, really. There were some good practical effects that they achieved towards the end. I'll give them that. But I just found the story boring, to be honest. And when you find out what's going on, I was like, oh, it's not all that special. I mean, I've seen variations of it before. And again, I know budget, can't do a lot of new stuff with it. But at the end of the day, I just call films as I see them. No matter what the budget is, or how big of a film it is. If it's a blockbuster, an indie film, I watch a film and I just tell it as I see it. And I watched Girl on the Third Floor, wasn't a fan of it. I found most of it kind of unintentionally funny, and CM Punk wasn't very good in the film. He's definitely a better wrestler than an actor, so I was going to say don't quit your day job, but that's already happened. So yeah, I'll go 2 out of 5 for Girl on the Third Floor. So there you have it, guys. That's everything that I watched in the month of February 2020. My throat's starting to hurt, so I'm going to have to deal with that if this is going to become a regular series, but hopefully it'll be worth it. So thanks for watching again. What is the best film or TV show that you watched in February 2020? Let me know down in the comments below, and I shall see you all next time.